Welcome to Global Media Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Swidale. I'm speaking today with Sean Gregory. He's the managing director of an Australian mining company called Sarytogan Graphite. Sean, welcome to the show.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now, your company is focused on a large graphite deposit in the Central Asian nation of Kazakhstan. And I understand the name of your company, Sarytogan, that comes from Kazakhstan, but I have to say I looked it up and I couldn't figure out what it means. Where does the word come from?
Yeah, look, interesting tidbit. It's just a local name in Kazakhstan, but literally translated from the Kazakh language, it means yellow bush. And you may note on our website there's some beautiful landscape photos. It's a really nice part of the world, Kazakhstan.
All right, excellent. So yellow bush, and I believe Sarytogan, I mean, it's in Kazakhstan, but we're chatting. There's also Sarytogans, in Florida and maybe in Queensland, Australia as well. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I mean, the Kazakh language is just full of beautiful words, and but you don't come across the name anywhere. I think there's actually a fish that is called a Saratoga or something like that. But anyway, that's by the by. We have got the world's second largest and the world's highest grade graphite project, and graphite can be a little bit down and dirty. It's a grey, dark, and dusty substance. Sometimes it's nice to have a splash of colour in our story.
There you go. All right, so let's talk graphite and your project. You've conducted a pre-feasibility study that estimates this project is worth more than $500 million US. That is a lot of money. And you're projecting an internal rate of return of 33%. That is also pretty high for the graphite industry. So could you walk us through your assumptions? What are the factors underlying these projections?
Yeah, look, Michael, the economics from the pre-feasibility study certainly are very positive and give us the confidence to keep pushing this project forward. So what's driving that? What makes Sarytogan so attractive in the marketplace compared to other graphite projects? Well, we start, of course, I already mentioned, world's second largest, world's highest grade. Grade is king in mining, that's the saying, and you see that flows right through. So for every tonne of product that we produce, we've only got to mill perhaps a third of amount of the material as some competitors. So that does play a big part in the story. When we benchmark our capital costs and our operating costs for both our upstream development and our downstream development versus other peers listed on the ASX, our project certainly compares very favourably. And then when we look at our revenue side of the equation, we've got some really interesting products that I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail, but that also differentiates us from the competitors. We've got some very, very high-grade material and also some material for more traditional industrial uses. So all of that runs through the pre-feasibility study and gives us good numbers.
All right, so let's talk about those products, because you're not...
One more, Michael, and we'll get to it as well, but also let's not forget about Kazakhstan as well, low-cost jurisdiction, and I'm sure we'll get to that.
All right. So as you mentioned, you're not just planning to dig graphite out of the ground, you're also looking to process it into specialized products right there in Kazakhstan. So walk us through the strategy. Why is that the right move?
Yeah, look, it does. It's our product strategy, which is a key part of our overall strategy. Now, in these matters with these mining projects, it's really important that we let our ore body do the talking and we let our ore body speak to us. Our project, it is different to many other graphite projects. Many other graphite projects, particularly in East Africa, they tend to have coarse flakes, which were highly desirable 10 years ago. But it turns out our material is more fine flake, and we're quite fortunate that that's exactly what you need in batteries. But at our first stage, we do flotation, takes it up to 80% carbon. Many others go straight to 90% carbon. But you know what? That 80% carbon product has got a really nice market, and especially at our micronized sizing that allows it to attract a good price. And then as we went on and went through the metallurgical test work, we were targeting 99.95% for lithium-ion batteries, but we got a little bit lucky, and our thermal purification actually goes all the way to 5 nines purity. That is 99.999% carbon. So again, differentiating us in the marketplace with a superior product, and we have demonstrated the performance of that product to be be superior to many competitors.
So your graphite is high grade, I get that, but at the same time, graphite is an industrial mineral. It's not a rare commodity. At the same time, your company is a relatively new entrant in the sector. So what do you do to differentiate yourself? What makes your product special?
Yeah, look, very insightful question, Michael. Look, the graphite market, it is very much an industrial market. And for some of those lower price products, like our 80% carbon product, it's all about proximity to market and being able to service those markets. Being located in Kazakhstan, we're right between some very large markets. There'll be, of course, domestic sources in those industrial uses, but as we move further afield, we're ideally positioned with a freight advantage to service Europe. We're right next door to China, but they've got their own graphite. So we, I guess, come in on that Silk Road from China to Europe with a real head start in that we're halfway to Europe. So that certainly helps. For the more advanced uses, it comes down to performance. These are very high-priced products, and it's all about top technical performance. And when you've got 5 nines purity, that gives you a chance to crack into the market. And I tell you, I'd much rather be the guy going into a marketing negotiation saying, "I'm very sorry, sir, but we exceeded your spec by 50 times," than be the guy who comes in and says, "Sorry, we just missed the spec."
That's a great way of putting it. I want to talk about your target markets. I mean, you're aiming to supply really fast-growing industries, EVs, renewable energy storage, high-tech electronics, even industrial diamonds. Just how much graphite do these sectors need?
Yeah, so the graphite market, so Wood Mackenzie say that the graphite market is doubling this decade from about 4 million tonnes per annum to about 8 million tonnes per annum by the end of the decade, and then onwards to 10 million tonnes per annum. The vast, more than half of that demand is, of course, batteries. I'm sure you'd be unsurprised to hear. And look, in that space, a lot of that demand is actually being filled by synthetic graphite. Now, natural graphite's got a bit of catching up to do. The synthetic graphite's been able to capture that market share because it's quick and easy, but it comes at a penalty. It's dirty, requires a huge amount of energy, which is CO2 emissions and cost. And then in terms of performance, it is also lower on performance than natural graphite, and specifically our natural graphite. So look, that market is growing, and then some of those other markets may be a little bit smaller, but we've got so much graphite. We've got, because our deposit is so large, we want to get as many units of carbon into as many markets as we can. So we certainly be targeting those battery markets, but also pushing tonnes in traditional uses, things like foundry uses, brakes and rubbers and plastics, wet lubricants, dry lubricants. Some of the ones you mentioned, I think synthetic industrial diamonds, and perhaps even the other one people will see is the nuclear moderator as well. They're a little bit more niche, sort of small tonnage markets. And look, I think that's a lovely thing to have achieved, but to be honest, the project is going to get up on the back of traditional industrial uses and battery uses.
Okay, got it. So traditional industrial and battery uses. I want to talk about geopolitics a bit now. You've mentioned a little bit about Kazakhstan already. And I just want to point out the backdrop that you have, that's Perth, which is where you're located, where your company is located. But of course, your business is in Kazakhstan, which is known for its resources. I mean, it's the world's richest producer, largest producer of uranium, a lot of other metals there as well. And of course, graphite, as we've been talking about. How do you find working there? What should investors know?
Yeah, look, we just couldn't be happier working up in Kazakhstan. In fact, I should have my background, the beautiful skyline of Astana, which is a real modern metropolis, as is Almaty. So big cities, prosperous nation. You mentioned they're the world's biggest uranium producer. They've got a big oil and gas industry. Chevron put $20 billion into a project there just a few years ago. A lot of the majors are up there exploring for copper. But it's other benefits as well that we see flowing through our project. And firstly, the ease of moving through the government processes. I think one of the biggest supporters of our company and our project is actually the Kazakh government. We just achieved our environmental permit and our mining license just over the Christmas period. And that was an absolute breeze to work through that system. Investors can draw comfort that it's a very high level of environmental standards and a mining act modelled off Western Australia, but the processes are just so much smoother. So that was a pleasure. We'll see it come through the costs as well. Look, out of their oil and gas industry, the diesel for domestic use is supplied at very good pricing with no excise taxes, all these sorts of things. The labour costs are very low, and they're skilled labour. All of our geologists come out of the local universities, and they're as good as any geologists out of Australia. They do a great job. Power costs. The power costs are actually in the lowest quartile in the world. And all of these things, this fed into the pre-feasibility study. And one of the things that we sought to determine in the pre-feasibility study was, where should we build our downstream plant? Should we build it in Eastern Europe? But we just couldn't go past Kazakhstan for all those aforementioned reasons. Reliable regime, smooth regime, low costs on every front. So we actually see Kazakhstan as our biggest opportunity rather than any sort of risk.
John, let's take a look at the investment side of the equation now. Shares of Sarytogan Graphite have come under selling pressure since you went public in 2022. They're currently trading around a 52-week low. Why do you think investors should take a fresh look at the company? Why is it a stock to watch?
Yeah, look, Michael, I think that's a good way to look at it. It's time to take a fresh look at Sarytogan. I think right across the board, the graphite market has been under pressure because of that synthetic graphite stealing market share. But when we look across the graphite universe, when you benchmark our project against all others, when you consider our market cap, versus the size and grade of our project is absolutely peerless in that regard. We are bigger, better value, higher grade than any other graphite project out there. We're real. We're pushing this project forward. We've got funding from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. They've just tipped $5 million in, and I can assure you they didn't do that lightly. An enormous amount of technical and legal due diligence that we passed last year to achieve that investment. Then when you look at the pre-feasibility study and the metrics, look at benchmarking the capex of our project per installed tonne. Look at the operating costs for our products. Look at the pricing that we can achieve for our products with the superior 99.999% graphite that we plan to produce. I think it's well worth investors having a fresh look at Sarytogan Graphite. It's worth having a look at the graphite space more broadly. And then once you've got your head around graphite being a little bit hard done by, have a look at Sarytogan, because we are, without doubt, the best value and highest quality graphite project globally.
All right, well, that definitely sounds like a great seal of endorsement from Europe. I think it's also worth pointing out that analysts at Far East Capital think that your stock is a buy, particularly at these levels. They like your business plan as well as that quality, that high quality of your graphite. Sean, thanks so much for joining us today. Great to talk to you.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Sarytogan Graphite's Managing Director, Sean Gregory, and you've been watching Global One Media's Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Sweato.